A judge ruled that Google Translate was a useful tool but inadequate for soliciting consent.
The Spanish government plans to spend 1.6 billion or invest 1.6 billion euros into the audiovisual sector.
And welcome to SlaterPod 91. Hi, Esther.
Hey, Florian, how you doing?
I'm well rested. I had 1 week of sunshine, and I'm ready to catch up on, what happened in the industry. So brief
Good.
holiday.
Yeah, you did. You're
Yeah,
away.
I was away. I was in sunny Spain. It was beautiful. Forgot how cool it is to travel. No, it wasn't cool, but But anyway, was a good vacation. Good to kind of get to practice Spanish a little bit again. Feels
Yeah.
like I forgot most of it, but looks like I haven't all of it. So cool. Today short episode, guestless episode, but nonetheless you should stay tuned because we're going to talk about flooding and subtitles, Spain and media localization, MT quality impact on post editing and post editing MT, Transperfect's Q3 again sharing their numbers. Thank you very much. And Google Translate and US police car searches. So this is a news podcast, Esther. But
Yes.
first, housekeeping. SlaterCon December. Well, it's not housekeeping; it's internal announcement, right? December 1st, open for registrations now. Registrations are coming in. We got a great program. We got Uber, Subway, Canva, LanguageWire, Intento, E2F, and much, much more. So, do check out the agenda and register early because you get the early bird discount. And, we're going to get to the, we get our 250, 300, 350 turnout again on Hopin. Great for networking. So cool. Actually, some industry conferences are coming back.
Yeah.
Kudos to NTIF. They're doing their conference in I actually don't recall the city, but it's in person and you can book. So anybody who's in
Yeah,
the
a few people have
Nordics,
been asking me if we're planning on doing a in-person event this year.
yeah. Sorry, I'm getting chased by a fly. Um, yeah, no, well, this year probably not. I think too busy, but maybe early next year. Let's see. Esther, tell us, why does flooding or water damage impact subtitling?
Yeah, it's a good question. I did not know that this was a risk. But yeah, once you dig into it, I suppose it makes sense. But this is a story that came out of here in the UK, which is a bit of an ongoing saga, it seems, about subtitle services and various other audio services that are being disrupted at one of the sort of major channels here in the UK. So Channel 4, which many viewers would not have heard of, but yeah, one of the major channels here in the UK. So there's been disruption to the subtitling and captions and audio description services on the channel since 25th of September. So this is going on for, what's that, 3 weeks or nearly 4 weeks now. And what happened on the 25th of September was that all services and associated channels went off air briefly, and the reason behind that was, as you said, flooding, or as they put it, fire suppression system being triggered at one of the suppliers, so Red Bee Media, at their broadcast center. So this happened on a Saturday, 25th of September. And yeah, apparently, as a result of that, a lot of some of the hard disks on various systems at Red Bee were severely damaged. And apparently, this impacted the playout servers, and that led to various channels and on demand services being temporarily taken off air. But what happened also since then is that they are unable to provide audio description, sign language, and subtitling services. And they said that this is irretrievably lost during the incident, and we won't be able to restore them until we move to the new system that's being built. Yeah.
So, yeah. Couple of lessons here. So sometimes when you go through these large RFPs and like they're asking these ridiculous kind of security questions,
Mm,
there's a reason for that. I remember some of our big banking clients wanted us to like they literally wanted to go and check like the temperature in the server room at the time.
yeah.
No, of course not today. Maybe you got a lot more on the cloud, but if you still have on-prem, they want to make sure you have everything secure. In this case, I don't know how that could have been prevented. What so somebody, I don't know, set up the smoke alarm and the sprinkler started to flood all the hard
Maybe
disks.
it
But
was
I
the
mean
toaster.
maybe it's just those. But yeah, I mean, the bigger things, I guess, if yeah, some of these procurement kind of super detailed questions for outside, kind of tail risks, have a grounding in reality. Because yeah, here, you have a supplier basically taking down a TV station. So
Yeah. I mean, the TV station is still running.
yeah,
It's
but
just obviously all of those services. But I mean, here in the UK, and I guess elsewhere when that happens, I mean, people are very quick to complain, and rightly so. I mean, you've got people, especially sort of deaf, hard of hearing audiences, who are unable to access quite a lot of content that they would otherwise, want to be enjoying and watching. So you've got the regulator that got involved that said they've got lots of complaints. And yeah, obviously they're kind of working together, banding together to try to get things back up and running. And it sounds like they're probably going to be focusing on subtitles, getting that back up and running first. And they
mm.
said it's a complex job, large number of different systems at Channel 4, and that they've been testing kind of overnight because they didn't want to risk it all falling apart again.
So maybe there's going to be a move to Spain in the cards for them, like me. Why?
Uh, I'm just taking yeah, I was just pausing for a minute to take that in. I was like, "What really? Would, Channel 4 with the UK, I
No,
guess
not Channel 4, but maybe
they
the
might
suppliers,
outsource it. The
Yeah.
supply yeah, but then I think this is definitely sort of an on-prem type solution for broadcast.
I get
Anyway,
it as a bad
good seg.
segue.
Good seg, Florian, and I'll pick up on it before
Cool,
rather
thank
than
you.
picking it apart. Yeah, so this was another story that we ran this week about Spain becoming, or as our title said, recasting itself as an audiovisual hub, and what that means for LSPs and media localization companies. So yeah, interesting. I didn't know much about this, but I had a good read of the story that Seema wrote. And it seems that even it's kind of going up to the highest levels with the Spanish Prime Minister, meeting with Apple CEO Tim Cook and discussing various plans around the audiovisual sector. So it was reported after that meeting that the Spanish government plans to spend 1.6 billion or invest 1.6 billion euros into the audiovisual sector between now and 2025. And the aim here is to expand the industry in Spain by 30%, so quite considerably over, 2, 3 years. Um, I mean, overall, I think the sense is that, well, boosting that industry, so video production, all those kind of related filming and things, boosting that is really good for the economy, both public and private sector. But obviously, it takes investment, like Google investing, others as well. And the Prime Minister said that Apple apparently was particularly interested in AI development, maybe unsurprisingly, AI development and TV production in Spain. Apparently, they paid about 50 million to acquire a Barcelona-based company called Vilinx,
The
something along
links.
those lines.
Video
Um,
links. Video links, maybe.
I don't know,
Like, I
Vilinx,
mean,
yeah.
that's, I guess, the short form.
Yeah,
Fi
yeah, yeah.
links.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
was like and so that company develops AI technology that helps make video more searchable. So kind of the whole metadata searching stuff, which is quite interesting. But you've got Apple already that's got offices in Barcelona, and they've got some annotation analysts, various roles there. I think mostly working on Siri, but kind of adjacent to this whole audiovisual production as well. And then Netflix also got a production center in Madrid, which is their first in Europe. Interestingly, which I didn't know. And apparently, they're really looking at that Madrid center as a base for operations management. They could manage sort of other operations across other regions. In the DACH region, Southern Europe, MENA. So they're kind of planning on using that as a bit of a base to really I mean, look after all of the operations, quite broad reaching. And Netflix has said, as we're emerging into the Spanish market, there'll be a collection of corporate content and production functions focused on this region. So it sounds like they might well be hiring quite aggressively in the area. So quite exciting for potentially also localization professionals as well. And then on the localization side, there are already, a lot of LSPs, a lot of audiovisual specialists that are active and based in Spain. So we pulled up a few different stats around that. Pros. I think this was quite an interesting one that SEMA dug out. So Pros has, I think, almost 30,000 linguists and LSPs based in Spain. I mean, obviously, don't know who they are or what they do necessarily, but the point that I found interesting was that apparently Pros has introduced a video portfolio quite recently, about a year ago, that allows some linguists and also audiovisual translators to showcase their work. So you can upload, video stuff that you've done, subtitling or what have you. And then obviously you also had Transperfect that when they did their kind of serial acquisitions of media localization providers in, I think it was 2019, they acquired a number of Spanish companies. So Lasso Studios, Sublime Subtitling. Yeah. So it seems quite active, quite buoyant as well in terms of on the LSP side. What's your take?
No, I mean, look, it's going to be good for, I don't know, what do you call it? Like the ecosystem, but like the supplier ecosystem around. I mean, if they boost that industry there and people start filming, producing there, doing post production, obviously it's good for media localizers as well.
Mm.
And it's going to be good for our friends over at Transperfect again if they already have a strong hold on that region. Then there was this whole thing around the Asociación de
Oh yeah.
Traducción de Adaptación Audiovisual de España, for that pushback. So what is it? The ATRAE, right? They're called. So
Yeah.
the Audiovisual Translator Association that pushed back against the alleged use of post-editing MT by the Netflix vendor for the Korean series Squid Game, which turns out to be now the most popular series ever or something, or at least number two. We
Yeah.
spoke about it last time, I think, briefly. Yeah, just read the story. They put out a statement. Um, I wonder if they really used MT for the subtitles. Sounds not very
Mm.
Netflixy, but who knows?
There was something that I heard around that it was either auto generated or that it was somehow just based off the dubbing script, so that it hadn't been given. And I don't know if this is verified, but it hadn't been given like a ton of sort of manual attention or human attention for the subtitles.
It's ironic that this was the series that was the most successful series. So it didn't
But do you
hurt.
know what?
It didn't
And
hurt commercially, right?
but
So it's
Florian, I have to say, I did my
yeah,
research. I did my research. I
go
watched
on.
Squid Game.
Yeah.
So I watched Squid Game, but I did not watch the dub version. I watched the subtitled version.
And
It was good. I mean, for me, it was good. I think I understood what was going on, or at least whatever story I was told through the subtitles was very interesting. Couple of things that I was like, is that right? Obviously not speaking Korean. I say obviously, I don't speak Korean. But yeah, a couple of things I was like, oh, I think they mean something else.
mm,
But like only like really once or twice, quite early on in the series. I mean, I would not have said that was MT generated, certainly not in English, but I might be wrong, or maybe MT for subtitles is super good.
it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that the series that I mean, maybe it's because it's so successful, people like really drilled into the subtitles, and it wouldn't have
Yeah.
gotten the subtitle issue wouldn't have gotten that attention if it hadn't been that successful. So who
I'm gonna
knows?
watch it again with the dub version just for, real
Oh,
thorough
I
research.
watched the dub version in English. It's just I'm so not used to. Did I say this last time? Sorry for
No,
anybody if
I
I
don't think
mentioned this,
so.
but if I watch anything that's dubbed not in German, I can't. I can't. It's so
Oh,
bad.
interesting.
It's just such a
Yeah.
bad. No, okay, I shouldn't say that. It's an extremely unusual experience for me to watch something that's not dubbed into German. If I watch it in
Mm.
German, it's fine. I grew up like that, so can live with it.
Did
But
you know that sometimes they were actually speaking English? So there are a few points
huh?
in the which I was like, oh, you wouldn't necessarily understand that by if you watch the dubbing. But there are a few points where some of the characters speak English. Yeah,
But then you
throughout the
should
series.
dub over it because I mean, otherwise the voice would change, right? So
Yeah, yeah, but it's nice to know that they're speaking a different language. Like it's part of the story.
it's almost yeah. Well, how would you do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. You
So
can't.
that's where it's lost in translation.
Mhm.
Okay, quick MT excursion. Mem source in Charles University in Prague. They have um, run a study, and it's always hard to summarize the whole study setup, the research setup in a podcast because
Mm.
it's like a couple of pages and a research paper, and it's balanced. We'll discuss MT research in much more detail in our next podcast, but basically, MemSearch Charles University, they were in a nutshell looking at how does machine translation quality and impact the post editing speed. And they found, surprise, it's difficult to correlate the two. And they had 30 professional English to Czech translators and translation reviewers. They looked at output from 13 MT engines. Um, there was or s- 13 different outputs. There was a variant with no translation, so just looking at the source, and then the pre-existing reference translation, which was the reference. The CAT tool was surprisingly MemSource, since they were part of the study. They the post editors and reviewers were instructed to correct mistranslations, inaccuracies, grammar style, or style errors, but not really do kind of any preferential changes.
Mm.
Which when I was a translator, I was doing a lot of preferential changes. Felt good about myself, but probably didn't improve the text too much. So, four key findings: changes to raw MT did not uh, take a lot more time than changes to post edited content.
Mm.
Um, do you understand that? So basically, like if you just edited raw MT, it wasn't significantly more time consuming than just reviewing and making changes to post edited content that was already post edited by a human, right?
Yeah.
So raw
Yeah.
MT, post edited,
So
the
basically,
review
the post editor didn't add very much.
apparently, according to the editors, that's set up there, translated from scratch was not significantly slower than post editing in either of the two phases either. That's super strange. Like so,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess yeah, that's maybe more the test setup. I hope that post editing would be faster than translating from scratch. So let's just put that in a separate box. So it was difficult to discern the exact impact of MT quality on the post editing speed. I can imagine that. I mean, like MT quality is at that point where it's so
Yeah.
subjective that
But also
like
you don't know before you start
yeah,
editing or post editing, you don't know. So, how do you know that it's safe to kind of read or skim read? You don't because it
good
might
point.
not be.
And then one of the another interesting conclusion they had was professional translators and reviewers showed a clear preference for using even imprecise translation memory matches like 85 to 94% over MT output.
Yeah.
That is super interesting.
That's not that surprising. 85 to 94 is quite a high match.
It's quite high, but basically you're like implicitly relying on like, okay, most of this is okay because it was done by a human. So I'm not gonna like I have a much higher trust. I'm probably not gonna read the whole thing. I'm just gonna look for what's highlighted as
Different.
having changed, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, for what it's worth, thank you for the study. Transperfect closes in on that, $1 billion target. Phil Shaw just wants to be $1 billion company by the end of this year. This is clear. And they bought
But it
uh
probably will be.
there will be, and they bought semantics, and they're definitely going to hit that target. But they're also growing organically super fast.
Mm.
They grew like 24%, around 52 million in a quarter. So they
Yeah.
had quarterly revenues of $279 million this year. This is up like 31% from the previous year. I mean, this is
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is not super agency level growth. This is super fast growth. Um, and interesting. And they had their best ever month for billings, as they call it, in September 2021, when they generated just about a little bit more than $100 million. So you annualize that, you get to a, $1.2 billion run rate. Um, and revenues for the 9 months are at $777 million, for the 3 quarters to September 30th. So they're going to hit $1 billion easily. And so basically it means that RWS would have to buy another pretty large LSP or some other company to exceed those revenues. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
Well,
And
RWS is going to report soon,
they're going to
because they
report soon.
report to September, don't they? Their
Yeah.
financial year ends in September, so we shall soon see.
They're probably less obsessed with the $1 billion, but
Well,
yeah,
because in pounds, it's not quite as significant. It's like
true.
£725. It's like not quite a milestone.
True. Well, let's see what's going to happen on the exchange rate front by the end
Yes,
of the year.
exciting.
Um, and so Phil Shaw, the CEO, he said that travel and hospitality was one of the growth drivers. That's probably more U.S. linked, I'd say. I mean, in certain other parts of the world, some parts of Asia, slowly opening up, but was still quite bad. But for them, it was good. And Global Link, their kind of TMS technology section were standout drivers of growth in Q3. Apparently, the Global Link attracted another 129 new clients in the quarter. That's 123 in Q2. So, yeah, and the whole technology revenues climbed nearly 40% year to date compared to 2020. And that's extremely high margin um, revenue.
Business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is very, very high margin. So, we're going to be super profitable again this year. Quick story before we move on to just a quick summary of our buyer report. Interesting that there was a ruling in the US where a judge ruled that Google Translate was a useful tool, but inadequate for soliciting consent. What am I talking about? Well,
Mm.
police stops car, notices driver doesn't speak English well, pulls out Google Translate, the police officer that is, talks to the driver appears to give consent for car search, drugs are found, case ensues. Judge rules, hey, you can't use Google Translate to solicit consent. Turns out there's a couple of exceptions, so the driver was still sentenced. But interesting, all the comments from the judge, who of course, is not like a language tech expert, and
Probably not. No.
not at all, right? And but he said, hey, they kept referring to it as an app, which I love. It's like they don't think of it as like a technology, or it's just an app on the phone.
Yeah.
So it's a useful tool, but the judge said the app has an alarming capacity for miscommunication and error. He said the app can facilitate basic communication, but this does not make it an adequate method for soliciting consent. And then also the judge said, Google Translate and other smartphone translation apps are a relatively recent phenomenon, and their use in the context of consent searches has only been analyzed in a handful of cases. So looks like,
Mhm.
he didn't want to set any precedents there.
I smell a research paper. I mean,
There
how
you go. There,
yeah.
yeah. And finally, another good quote is the app need to fail only once to obviate the suspect's consent. Interesting. I find this super interesting. I mean, this goes so way beyond just Google
Mm,
Translate. I mean, AI as, going deeper and deeper into our lives. And in this case, again, like, can you rely on it? I mean, in practice, probably when it
you
comes
would
to like,
think so. That's
yeah,
quite
but
basic, isn't it?
yeah, but when it comes to your legal rights, it's like, hey, the app said something else. And it's so fundamental to like
Mm,
human interaction
mm,
to let these technologies, you know, get involved so deeply in our lives.
indeed.
Um, we got deeply involved into localization buyers' mindsets. So, what do we have for them on our website?
Yeah, so this is another research report that was our latest that was published last week. So hopefully, some people will have seen it and downloaded and purchased already. Um, but yeah, so it's the title is Slater Pro Guide: Becoming an Effective Localization Buyer. So yes, definitely sort of looking more so at buyers and how buyers operate and best practice around that, but also relevant for language service providers who want a bit of insight into
Yes.
the psyche of localization buyers. So lots to unpack from that pro guide, but I'll give you some of the highlights. So we looked at how localization is becoming kind of ingrained into globalization strategies in different companies. There's this one page roadmap that
Love that one. That one's
I
really
really
good.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a lot of value packed into just one page. You can probably keep coming back to again and again. But that looks at how organizations develop from kind of undeveloped into more mature localization buyers and some of the steps through supplier procurement, through MT automation, some of the QA things that you put in place to become more mature, looking at things like how ROI contributes to that. So yeah, really, I think informative in that one page. There's also 5 buyer case studies, so quite deep dive into different buyer case studies there across a couple of different sectors: technology, transport, logistics, e-commerce, and professional services. If you want a bit of insight into how buyers are operating in those areas. We also looked at job roles and job titles. So the most frequent titles per localization job role across different functions of the enterprise buyer. And it's all nicely presented into a one-page word cloud, kind of looking at some of the most common across those different enterprise localization teams. We looked at some of the key challenges for localization buyers and how people are approaching that. We looked at 5 key trends for localization buyers also. And then it's kind of rounded off with a very helpful index because, as people might know, we've done a ton of buyer features over several years with Slater. So we've indexed, I think, more than 90 of our buyer features to so people can easily access those as well as a quick
90.
reference.
We need
Yeah,
to hit
more than
100.
90. I know saying more than 90 is not as great as saying 100, but
Nearly
there
100. It's also
well, would be.
we've done nearly 100 podcasts now, Esther.
We have quite an achievement.
Yes. And we'll do 92 next week with a
Yes.
guest. Surprise. Cool. All right. Well, that was it for today. Thanks for listening in again. And, make sure to get your ticket for SlaterCon Remote and see you next week.
See you soon. Bye.